Welcome to Truthzilla. Another week. I'm Ed. I got the beautiful Megan, the lovely Scott with me here. We're going to do kind of a more classic episode this week, kind of just the three of us. We're going to get riffing on some craziness of this COVID pandemic, which that was a great new documentary.
Hell yeah.
The Indoctrination.
Yep.
If you haven't seen that, we did post it on our podcast attachment, and if you want just the audible version, but I would recommend going and watching the video. It's really important. It's something I would say watch it and share it. And before we get going here, I just want to make one small kind of housekeeping thing. Is I want to apologize. We had a wonderful episode last week, but I listened to it, man, and I just had F-bombs flying out all over the place. And I'm going to try to tone that down because I put it on in the car with my kids, and I was like, I can't listen to that.
Yeah.
So, just get that out of the way. So before we get into here, Scott wanted to do some shout-outs and promote some stuff.
Yeah, man. I mean, such an awesome episode last week with Dean, dude. And like you were saying, we're just going old school Truthzilla. We're doing just the three of us, man. And it's funny because, old school as in, 6 weeks ago, right? Old school as in 6 weeks ago, man. Before we had just some powerhouse guests, dude. We had Ricky Verandis, the Ripple Effect podcast. We had Miriam Hanane, honeycolony.com. Man, if you haven't checked out these episodes, definitely go back and check them out. We had Ryan Hartwig, Facebook whistleblower, man. Sean from the World Series of Conspiracies talking about the Federal Reserve, man. We just were on such a hot streak. And then last week with Dean, man, we saw our numbers shoot through the roof, Union of the Unwanted episodes, dude. Man, it's so cool. It's so cool.
Del Bigtree?
Yeah, we were in the same, room, supposedly, quote-unquote, room with Del Bigtree, dude. What the hell? It's crazy, man. But, I just want to give some shout-outs, dude. We got a lot of people that listen to the show that are reaching out, contacting us on social media and stuff. So if you're not following us on social media, we have a lot of fun. Definitely hit us up on Instagram and Facebook at Truthzilla, and then on Twitter at Truthzilla Pod. Alan F., Pedro G. down in Australia, man, hanging tough with all the craziness down there. Craig H., man, thank you guys for reaching out to us. All Screwed Up on Instagram. If you're hearing me, get on that podcast, dude. That's going to be the best podcast ever. I'm not going to spoil what the premise is, but he's got the greatest idea ever for a podcast. But I want to really encourage you to do it, man. On Twitter, we got Alien Tom. Shout out, buddy. John Wright, Neon Neuron, and Sig Sauer, man. You guys have been really representing the Truthzilla Mind Militia. I really appreciate it, you guys. It's so much fun to, interact with the fans out there, and it's just really cool. So, yeah, we're just going to kind of just chill tonight and have some fun with this thing, man, because there's so much in the world that it's crazy. It's almost to the point where it is funny. It's hilarious. And so, yeah.
Well, speaking of our Australia listener, and we all know what's been going on down there was some reporting that went on. And if you watch the High Wire, you may have heard this already, but I thought it was so good that I wanted to play it again. I just think it's inspiring that when people speak out and then they speak truth, and there are some things that were uncovered here that we kind of knew, but put some statistics in light that made a lot of sense. So why don't we get right in?
Heck yeah. All right. So this is from, Sky News Australia. Blast lockdown politicians and commend Sweden for their successful strategy.
2 words that should put the fear of God into every politician in this country, every highly paid bureaucrat, every chief medical officer, every health administrator, and every unemployed man and woman now looking at lives shattered, careers devastated, dreams obliterated, and futures destroyed. 2 words that are also 2 European countries, Sweden and Switzerland. Let's start with Sweden. 4 months ago, we interviewed on Outsiders Professor Johan Giesecke, the former state epidemiologist for Sweden and the mentor to Anders Tegnell, who has been in charge of Sweden's controversial response to COVID-19. On that show, which any politician in Australia could have chosen to watch, Professor Johan Giesecke spelt out in crystal clear detail that you could not eradicate the coronavirus, you could only slow it down, and that the only people that should be quarantined were the elderly and the vulnerable as a preventative measure. A major lockdown, he warned, such as they did in the UK, and we are now seeing in Victoria and New Zealand, he warned would simply leave the population without herd immunity so permanently vulnerable and in the process completely destroy our economies. Let me now quote from Friday's editorial in the UK Telegraph, not some crazy conspiracy rag, but one of Britain's most respected newspapers. Here's what they said. So now we know Sweden got it largely right and the British establishment catastrophically wrong. Anders Tegnell, Stockholm's epidemiologist king, has pulled off a remarkable triple whammy. Far fewer deaths per capita than Britain, a maintenance of basic freedoms and opportunities, and most strikingly, a recession less than half as severe as our own. Our arrogant quangocrats, says the UK Telegraph editorial, and state experts should hang their heads in shame. Their reaction to coronavirus was one of the greatest public policy blunders in modern history. Millions will lose their jobs. Tens of thousands of small businesses are failing. Vast numbers are likely to die from untreated or undetected illnesses. Sound familiar? Daniel, Jacinda, Anastasia? Also this week, Dr. Sebastian Rushgrove, a Swedish doctor writing on the Spectator Coffeehouse blog, confirms firsthand the success of the Swedish approach. He writes, all the COVID patients have disappeared. It is now 4 months since the start of the pandemic, and I haven't seen a single COVID patient in over a month.
In a month. Well, I mean, there's something to be said. Like, different countries handled it differently, right? Sweden obviously did what they did. United States, we obviously did what we did. UK did what they did. Australia's doing what they're doing. And there was like this video saying like that's the wrong approach. That's the wrong approach is what all these other countries that locked down did.
Sure.
But like to me, like this whole time, ever since they shut down basketball back in March, I was just like, oh, this is an agenda. This is something that has been pre-planned. Like it's not like they're doing something wrong. This is all going exactly according to plan. As far as I'm concerned, it's like they're not reacting to things as they happen, and they're not, reacting to new developments and new science that comes out. They're trying to make their agenda fit in. They're trying to put a square peg in a round hole. They have the agenda. They have these things that they're trying to roll out. They have these things that they're trying to implement. They've been wanting to for a long, long time, and they saw this perfect opportunity. The virus is a real thing, but it's like it's not nearly as bad as they said, and they're using that to roll out all these agendas, right? And so now that it's all coming to light and it's all falling apart right before their very eyes, they're now having to really force it down our throats, using whatever means, deception, lies, and we'll get into it here.
Well, and I just to comment on what you're saying there, though, I am still torn between, is there a virus?
Yeah.
Is there not a virus? I've seen further proof that says that, this has been never isolated. I just saw something recently, I forget what it was, but there was another article that cited that they still have not isolated this virus, that someone followed up on that further. But at the same token, though, no matter what, you look at, if you believe this thing's a virus, then look at the data here. I mean, the data is there. We have the data, but we're going against the data. But what I truly believe, if you look at our numbers, we have this weird graph right now where it goes this big spike and then it starts going down. It's almost going away, and then we open up and it goes up a little bit and it's starting to go down again. And watch, the problem is what we know is happening is we're going into the fall.
Mm-hmm.
We're going into the fall. Guess what happens in the fall?
Flu season.
People get sick.
Yep.
People get sick.
Yep.
So every time people get sick, now we're going to call it COVID, and we're going to lock down again. So if there is a virus, we're going to contain it so we never get this herd immunity that happens in Sweden. So.
Yeah, are we even allowed to get sick? It's like what we were saying. It's like a criminal act now.
Certainly, no. Being sick has been criminalized.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about that a lot because I have 2 young children, and guess what happens with young children?
They get sick.
To be real frank, like there's something going around at daycare right now. There just is. And it's, everybody's freaking out, but it's like, guess what? This happens every year. It's just normal. This is normal. Kids, and to be completely honest, that's a good thing. Because when you're a kid, you're supposed to get sick to work your immune system. So when you get older, you can fight off things like cancer. Like that's the reality. So but let's keep going because I think there's some more interesting developments in this.
Absolutely.
Dr. Rushgrove. At the peak, 3 months back, 100 people were dying a day of COVID in Sweden, a country with a population of 10 million. We are now down to around 5 people dying per day in the whole country, and that number continues to drop. The daily risk per person of getting infected is 1 in 10,000, which is minuscule. Basically, COVID is in all practical senses over and done with in Sweden. Yeah. After 4 months, Sweden ripped the metaphorical Band-Aid off quickly, he writes, and got the epidemic over and done with in a short amount of time, while the rest of the world has chosen to try to peel the Band-Aid off slowly. COVID is over in Sweden, he writes.
Yep.
People have gone back to their normal lives and barely anyone is getting infected anymore. I am willing to bet, he says, that the countries that have shut down completely will see rates spike when they open up. If that is the case, then there won't have been any point in shutting down in the first place.
0 point.
Yeah, I mean, what is the point? What has been the point? I mean, other than to drive home these agendas, man. Like, just the destruction.
Yeah,
compliance. The destruction, man. Yeah. And I think this is just the start, man. This is literally just the start. We have a lot more coming. Like, the second wave, or God, who knows what, man. As we get close to this election, like, it's going to be whatever they're holding something in their pocket, man.
Well, I think it's, I mean, we still are seeing, there was another article that I just saw about, if Trump wins, did you see that article?
Yes.
It's the same thing. It's if Trump wins, Biden's not going to concede. You know, I mean, you see both sides. Neither side will concede to this election, so there's going to be some trickery no matter what. We know what's going on there, but in addition, though, I mean, we're going to see uptick in sickness because it's the fall. So what are they going to do with that? I think it's a scary place of what we're entering into, knowing the polarization of people right now. That people are either maskies or they're starting to wake up. I feel like you're on one or the other side. You're either on the waking up side or you're a maskie, and you're calling out every single person you see, and at this point your arguments have started falling apart. So you're just holding on by a thread, and you're just pointing the finger, and you're just
taking it out on us. You're taking it out on the people that are just like we're done with this. Like, we're done with this.
Yeah.
Like, we've been done this whole time. Like it's to the point where it's a little frustrating, right, Megan?
Yeah. It is.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we've had a couple run-ins this week. Yeah. They're just they're out there, folks. So be safe, be careful. And I saw an article earlier this week too from Statista.com, and we'll put a link in the show notes here. But as of August 15th, total pneumonia and influenza deaths pneumonia deaths have exceeded that of COVID deaths. So there was 159,000 pneumonia deaths, and COVID-19 deaths were 153. So now, the real pandemic now, if you really want to get down to it, is pneumonia. Pneumonia is the big pandemic now. We should be locking down the world. If we're going to lock down the world, it should be locked down because pneumonia is spreading everywhere, because it has exceeded the number of quote-unquote COVID deaths, or things that have been labeled as COVID.
But, I mean, if we're going to go that way, when we have to take into account heart disease and cancer and these other things, but we don't want to touch the ones where you could actually change your health to, where changing your health is the biggest factor. I mean, really it is in all of these things, but if they really cared, they'd be like, let's work on our health and what we're eating, what kind of food we're giving you, what kind of drugs we're telling you to get on,
Yeah, they could be working on a vaccine for heart disease. I mean, why aren't they working on that? Or how about a vaccine for all the starvation happening in the world? I mean, how many millions and millions of people die of starvation everywhere? They actually do have a vaccine for that. It's called freaking a cheeseburger, right? God. And they just can't, if they spent all these resources feeding these kids that are dying in all these different countries. But no, that's not profitable. No. There's no, you can't. I mean, you would think, okay, if you really want to control a population, why don't you just go in there with truckloads of food and be like, hey, you want this food? You do what we say. It seems like a pretty no-brainer type tactic if you really want to control people. Why you got to get all crazy with the freaking implants and the vaccines, man?
Well,
I don't know.
There's a whole new plan.
There's a whole new plan, dude.
There's a whole new way of managing the next, the fourth industrial revolution.
Oh, gosh. Yep. Humans are becoming obsolete, and they're really making a point of that. So it's freaky, man. All right, should we keep going?
Okay, let's keep going. Right. There's some good stuff.
That's Sweden. It appears that the warnings we made on this program before anyone else in Australia may well have been accurate. And then there's Switzerland and the use of the drug hydroxychloroquine, banned in Victoria and Queensland for treating the coronavirus. As I have repeatedly pointed out on this show, there are now dozens of international studies that show the drug used in the correct combination with other drugs and the correct dose, it is effective, including the latest study that shows countries that use hydroxychloroquine early on have a 79% lower COVID-19 mortality rate. Yeah. But here's the clincher. Switzerland briefly banned the drug after the Lancet claimed it was killing people. That's the medical journal. That study, you'll remember...
Should we remind our fans what the Lancet study is? Yeah. Can you give us a rundown on that real quick?
I mean, essentially, they came out with a study that is essentially...
Who's they?
Was that the World Health Organization?
I believe so.
I think they were, but it was supposedly 5,000 plus patients they used in this study, and it was pretty much called out right away and got retracted. And he's going to go into that here. But this isn't the one where they were using the high doses. Those were the other studies they tried to use after the Lancet study. Mm-hmm. The Lancet study was the study they put out that started the triggering of everybody pulling hydroxychloroquine across the world, really. Now the FDA made their move after this Lancet study got retracted, and they came out with these other studies that had where they used the doses that were 4 times higher, and that the World Health Organization knew they were lethal doses they were giving in these studies. But
okay,
discussed it here, was completely debunked, and 2 weeks later, the Lancet withdrew the study, and immediately Switzerland reinstated the drug. And guess what happened? During the 2 weeks, Switzerland stopped using hydroxychloroquine.
I wonder what.
According to a study done by Johns Hopkins University, the consequences of suddenly stopping hydroxychloroquine can be seen by examining the case fatality ratio index for Switzerland. It can be seen that during the weeks preceding the ban on hydroxychloroquine, the index fluctuated between 3 and 5%. But after stopping outpatient hydroxychloroquine use, the country's COVID-19 deaths increased 4 times to the highest level it had been since the pandemic began, oscillating at over 10 to 15%. Then, when early outpatient hydroxychloroquine was reinstated on June the 11th, the 4-fold wave of excess lethality rapidly returned back to where it was.
What more do you want, people? What more do you want? Like, we have an exact case study of what happens when you're using it, then you stop, and then you're using it again. I mean, it's proof. It is literal proof. Yeah. I mean, I don't know what else we can do but smack you in the face with that. This drug helps the death toll we're seeing. Yep. For sure.
Yep. I wish they had another term than case fatality ratio, because whenever I'm trying to find the Council on Foreign Relations involvement in this COVID thing, I always type CFR COVID or CFR this, and I keep coming up with the term case fatality rate. So I don't know, whatever.
Yeah.
And there are plenty of other reports, such as the one on DocWire News that says our findings suggest that patients confirmed for COVID-19 infection should be administered HCQ as soon as possible. Or a study from China that says patients treated with HCQ at the time of early hospital recovered faster than those who were treated later, or another study that found that when the drug was given in the
World Health
days, the benefits were greatly improved, or this graph that shows the case fatality rate of countries in blue that use or encourage the drug, and in red, the ones that don't. I don't need.
So was that was that last stat before that? Was that the World Health Organization? They had the World Health Organization thing on
I didn't notice.
Maybe I saw the little emblem on it.
Probably.
And so I heard an argument. I can't remember where I heard it. And whatever multitude of podcasts I listened to, someone made a really great observation, saying that, okay, so YouTube is pulling videos down on the basis that that their CEO came out and said that if you make a video that goes against the World Health Organization's recommendation, we're going to pull your video, 100%. Okay, well, what if that fact is, the World Health Organization is saying that, okay, hydroxychloroquine is whatever, so now all these anti-hydroxychloroquine videos, by their own definition, should be immediately pulled down.
And I think we'll get into this after this video completes, but I think we're finding as the data, you can't fight against the data anymore. There's so much data that goes against the agenda that even when the big CDCs and the World Health Organization say something that goes against the agenda, then the Democratic governors, as we'll see here shortly, they just changed what we're basing it on, and we don't agree with those experts.
Yep.
We'll get into that in a second. Let's finish this video.
Cool.
Spell it out for you. But here's the real joke. I have been denigrated this week by the medical community in Australia for merely reporting this news and discussing hydroxychloroquine use around the world, talking about the drug. Bizarrely, the Royal Australian College of General Practitioners magazine attacked me personally, as well as federal MP Craig Kelly. You'd think these lefties might actually be worrying about curing COVID patients and protecting the elderly rather than sneering at Sky News presenters and politicians. Still, we really should take our medical practitioners and their lobby groups seriously. I mean, they're the same mob who, as part of the COVID-19 recovery, are urging Scott Morrison to act quickly on climate change. You couldn't make this stuff up. So allow me to remind our political leaders and our media bureaucrats, medical bureaucrats, of two little words that deserve to haunt you in the wee hours of the morning: Sweden and Switzerland. Will history record that not only was the destruction of our economy completely pointless, but preventative treatments such as drugs like ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine in combination with others were sitting there right under our noses all along.
And I think this has some wonderful data, but what he misses is he still thinks that the politicians and these people have our best interest, and they just made a blunder. And that's the farthest from the truth. Yeah.
Totally. And I love to hear. It's interesting to hear him say the lefties over here. So it's a left-right thing down in Australia too.
It's so polarized.
I mean, maybe is this just a global agenda being played out? I mean, is there any question about it at this point? It's crazy, dude. What else have we got?
Well, I think it would be we need to go into the CDC and see what happened this week with the CDC.
Perfect.
It's just ridiculous. So
this one here.
Sure.
All right. CDC director attempts to clarify controversial COVID-19 testing guidelines.
Well, and this is the response. There was the first one, and this was on Monday, and I don't know if we have that article handy, but it's funny because I feel like one of the things I've noticed is I feel like they're almost scrubbing the internet as fast as they possibly can at this point, because as soon as something happens that doesn't fit the agenda, it's hard to find.
Yep.
And so the initial thing the CDC said essentially was they changed their guidelines on testing. They basically had been recommending that if you came in contact with someone who had COVID-19, that they wanted everyone to be tested, and they loosened that up to the point where you said, if you came in contact and you don't have symptoms, you may not need to get tested. Essentially, I mean, I wish we had the article to get their exact wording on that, but it was the same situation though that we had with the World Health Organization when they basically said that we don't have proof of asymptomatic carriers, and then it was completely walked back directly after that. This as soon as it happened, well, why don't we talk about now, Megan? What did you find on our good friend Gavin Newsom?
What a schmuck.
Do we have that? Can we pull that one up?
Do you have that up?
Do you have that quote? What does our boy Newsom say? Our brother of Katie.
Oh, Katie's little bratty little twin brother.
All right. So California will not abide by new guidelines for the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention that do not recommend COVID-19 testing for those without symptoms. Newsom says, quote, "I don't agree with the new CDC guidelines, period, full stop, and it's not the policy in the state of California. We will not be influenced by that change. We are influenced by those that are experts in the field that feel very differently. That is not the policy guideline that we will embrace or adopt here in California," end quote.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen.
What?
I don't think there was any surprise. His agenda was right from the start. This isn't... It's just demoralizing, really. It's not surprising. And this is the story they've all stuck by right from the start. Now they're just blatantly saying what they are, but somehow they're still holding office.
Oh, yeah. But I mean, God, just that sentence right there, guys. That's this whole COVID-19 debacle in a nutshell right there.
Certainly.
We're influenced by those that are experts in the field that feel differently. We are only influenced by those that feel differently than whatever it is goes
We
against
only
the agenda we're trying to
support the
put.
experts that support our agenda is
Yeah.
what that really is saying.
Yeah.
Like, we have an agenda, and when the people behind us that are experts say what we want them to, we use that against you. When they don't, we choose different experts.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
I mean, that's, yeah.
It's pretty sad, pretty pathetic, man, and it's just blatant at this point. Like, if you guys still think that this is like any of this has to do with protecting you from a virus, man, like, you just need to wake up.
That's good.
Yeah.
Let's do this quote real
All right,
quick,
what does it
too.
say?
So I was going to read this one, and I just saw this one right before we started recording. And this is Dr. Birx on August 18th. When people start to realize that 99% of us are going to be fine, it becomes more and more difficult to get people to comply.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's the agenda.
Yeah.
The word comply, that is
Yeah.
the entirety of this. This is the first phase of compliance.
Yep.
Yep. For sure.
Yep. If it wasn't even the hint of it being like an actual pandemic where there was actually going to be like lots and lots of people just getting wiped off the face of the earth, then, people would actually take appropriate action. You don't need a whole
Sure.
social media campaign and I will call it a disinformation campaign. They would call what we're doing a disinformation campaign, but I'll call what they're doing a disinformation campaign. You don't need that. You don't need a PR department to promote a pandemic.
Yeah.
It's insane. It's insane.
Yeah, pandemics speak for themselves.
They speak for themselves, folks. Come on.
Yeah.
Come on. So in Germany, there's a lot going on in Germany, dude. They've had
man.
it. They're in the streets. They're protesting. I saw just in the last couple of days, they've made it illegal to protest coronavirus.
But they had like 1 million people out.
Yeah.
at
Even
the
though
last
our
big
media is
protest.
trying to convince
Yeah.
us that it's like 10,000
Yeah, but it was like
right-wing
1 million.
extremists.
It was like
10,000
1
right,
million.
10,000 right-wing extremists have taken to the streets with no masks on.
And when I saw that article that where they were basically making it illegal to protest, they had like swastikas on there to like.
Oh my God.
It's so polarizing. If you
Photoshop.
don't believe in the agenda, you are a Nazi.
Yeah, yep. So let's see. The Corona Extra Parliamentary Inquiry Committee was established to investigate all things that pertain to the new coronavirus, such as the severity of the virus or whether or not actions taken by governments around the world, and in this case the German government, are justified and not causing more harm than good.
So they set up a whole committee to just
Censored.
look into this.
Censored.
What have they found?
Oh, the takeaway. We have to ask ourselves, why are so many experts in the field being completely censored? Why is there so much information being shared that completely contradicts the narrative of our federal health regulatory agencies and organizations like the WHO? Why are these experts being heavily censored, and why are alternative media platforms being censored, punished, demonetized for sharing this information? Why is that?
Well, I think it's pretty obvious at this point, because if you're not part of the agenda, then you're not with us. You're either with us or you're against us. And
Yep. All right. So more COVID craziness. How about this article from 2KU-TV News, August 25th, 2020. Study: exercise and COVID-19 can be a dangerous combination. Yeah, don't exercise when you have COVID. My favorite part about this article, though, is that down here in the text it says. Oh, what does it say? Oh, shit. Did they get rid of it?
pulled that out.
They did get rid of it.
Wow, they edited the article.
They edited the article since I
they're
posted
scrubbing
it.
it as fast
Yeah.
as fast as they can
Yep.
do it, because just
Good thing I made a post about it.
Yeah.
So what it is they said they in the text of the actual original article, it says KUTV2 News did not commission or participate in this study and could not verify its results or findings. So, we couldn't verify the results or findings, but we're going to go ahead and publish this anyway. We didn't even verify anything. We didn't do any journalistic due diligence at all. We're just going to go ahead and publish it. Yeah, whatever.
well, when I found this article the other day and I was talking to someone about it, and I just think, essentially this is kind of common sense that you could use to go either way. I think, if you get sick and you have a cold, and I would go sweat it out. I would go to the gym. I would get on a treadmill, get rid of it. If I have the flu and I'm really laid up and my body's hurting me, I'm probably not going to go to the gym. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of common sense. Like your body kind of tells you, and they're saying, yeah, if your lungs are collapsing, maybe you shouldn't go work out, right? Like that's kind of common sense. But this is just, it's feeding that same narrative that COVID is so scary. It's so scary that you better.
Well, if it was, it would be evident to all of us.
Yeah. Yep.
If it was, people would be sick and dying around us everywhere. There wouldn't be house parties going on in California. People would genuinely be afraid as a group, and you wouldn't have to tell people to stay inside because they would. So that's how you know. That's one of the 1,002 reasons why you know it's bullshit.
But, I would actually, I think, be scared to have a house party in California right now.
Because they'll shut your water and power off.
Yeah.
So that's a nice removal of your civil liberties without due process.
Yep.
That's your right to, pursuit of happiness, your right to liberty, your right to, be innocent of a crime without having first been convicted of a crime. To just remove people's ability to, these are customers. Right? These are customers that are, this isn't like they're cutting off a government check because they're disobeying a government illegal mandate. They're cutting off their ability to have a liberty that is well known throughout America that most of us have. And all of us know that that's a normal thing to expect in the United States. So to cut that off without any sort of, anyway.
But I think this is the training though, because there is half of people think that this is the right thing to do.
Yeah.
That they're pointing the finger and going, "Good job, Newsom. Good job, Newsom."
I have to say that I think that the biggest problem now is that I think that the masses of people who know what's up aren't standing up. And that includes all of us sitting at this table. We're not doing, everyone's not doing, we're not saying no. We still are contemplating sending kids to school. We still are throwing on a mask to go into the fucking grocery store. We still are complying a little bit at a time also. And so to that, we're guilty. We're part of this. I feel like we're sort of part of the problem because there needs to be, in order for this to end, there just has to be no. It has to be no from everyone who it's no for. And that nobody's, that's just it. So they're going to keep doing this. They're going to keep doing this as long as those of us that say no don't stand up and say no. Yep. And we're not drawing any lines in the sand. And I think that we've said this before, that the biggest inhibitor to that is knowing exactly how to do that without, and especially because they keep us so dispersed to where we can't organize together because of this digital book burning.
Yep.
It's hard to get together and stand up and know how to do that in a proper way. And I think, too, that those of us that stand for things that are good and on moral and ethical high ground aren't looking to, commit atrocities and acts of terrorism to get our point across. And that's another thing is that the people that are for something that is an actual, look, the people that are committing these other acts and the people that are following these alternate, and I will say that the mainstream is the alternate agenda, they're completely corrupted. They stand on nothing. They're not about anything that lasts. They're not about anything concrete. And so the only way that they can be heard is to be completely given in to a criminal mindset, this criminal psychopathy. And frankly, if you put, and just throughout the centuries, if you put human beings into a situation where they don't have rules and they don't have law and they don't have order, they're gonna do what the lowest vibrational energy will do. And that's just true throughout humanity. It doesn't have to be about the pandemic or, these different movements. This is the heart of humanity being given an excuse to run amok. So
Yeah.
And they know that, and they're feeding into it, man. Like, that's part of the agenda too, man. In order for this global rollout, America has to fall. They've been saying that for years. You look at the Council on Foreign Relations. People have come forward who have served on the Council on Foreign Relations for a long time, and they say that just without fail, everybody part of that organization is about this global rollout. Sure. And in order to achieve that, America has to fall. America has to fall, and we're witnessing it right now because.
Falling.
And Megan, you hit the freaking nail on the head, man. Those of us who it's no for need to stand by that, man. And I'm guilty of it too. It's like, I'm gonna be honest. Like, I've already lost one job because of this podcast. Okay, last month I found myself in a position where I was having to defend myself against some of the things on this podcast, and I ended up losing a job over it. Now I'm lucky enough that I got another job in the same field. I'm treading lightly, man. I'm treading lightly. And it's frustrating, but you know, and I'm not even really saying anything completely out of fucking. You know, I'm not trying to like, you know, I'm not advocating violence. I'm not saying go hurt people. I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm just asking questions and I'm trying to put alternative views out there.
Well,
somehow it's a fireable offense.
Well, and that's the problem with the agenda. That's the problem with what there needs to be is like that happens to one member of our community, and all of us that say no rise up for that member of our community. That we have attorneys that stand up in our communities. When there needs to be a collective of us that stand up and take each other's part and take each other's back, because they're gonna single us out and pick us off one at a time. Otherwise, but the truth of the matter is that we live in the United States of America, and regardless of all of the illegal mandates and all of the agenda, we still do stand on a document that says that we have the right to live our lives in a way that we see is fitting and best to our own energetic flow. That is what is guaranteed and promised to us. And to be told that outside of work, or outside of, you know, there's like coaches, there's a lot of different people involved in a lot of different webs throughout life that are being told that they cannot hold, they cannot say something. And we're not talking about racial somethings. We're not talking about, and by the way, though, in America, that's allowed. I'm not advocating, but I'm saying, but you can't take away a human being's ability to be an individual and say, look, the society will weed out the losers. Society will, we take care of the monsters, right? You got to let people do that. But what we have right now is a society that is making monsters into heroes. And it's part of the plan. It's absolutely part of the plan. So
certainly. Yeah, it's freedom of speech, freedom to believe what you want to believe, freedom to do what you want to do within, as long as you're not hurting other people. I'm all for that. And what we're doing right now is we're turning us on each other. This is just a perfect example here of them shutting down the water. These are some TikTok influencers.
I just put this on there. I love it because I listen to Tim Dillon, dude, and he just goes hard. Like he like this last week, he's saying how the TikTok kids are the George Washingtons of our generation. You know, like they just don't even care, man. They're leading this charge of independence and towards this new world order, dude. Like, you know, he's so funny. And so, yeah, they shut off the TikTok kids' power, you know, because they won't stop partying, right? Just insane, man. Like we saw this rolling out a few weeks ago, and now they're actually doing it.
They ought to take those politicians. There needs to be an uprising. People that pull those politicians out of office. It doesn't matter if people feel like that these kids are out of line or not. What's happening is the government is out of line with these kids. And that's the biggest part. The government is meant to safeguard our freedoms and our liberties, and when you have a government that does not do that, and in fact, exactly, they are meant to be a safeguard for us. And when it turns the other tide, the people are meant to rise against and take the power back from the government. That is what is not happening. That is exactly what has to happen for there to be a change. And this is, I see the word TikTok and stinking Garcetti, the idiot. And I kind of blow it off in the back of my mind, but this is real shit that's happening to real people. Yep. I am going to be one of these real people it's happening to. Mm-hmm. All of us know people need to do something different. And two, as we're going into the school year, this is another issue where we're laying down for it. All of us saying, we're not going to mask our kids and this isn't going to happen. And we're all like, well, September's around the corner, so we got to send our kids to school. And it's a huge deal. And now we've got this agenda being pushed through the school systems where we're going to push political policy, and we're going to push a socially adopted platform through public school curriculum where we have BLM propaganda now coming through the schools. Certainly. This is a huge deal. If you're teachers, if you are a teacher out there and your students know where you stand religiously or politically, you are a horrible teacher. They ought to take your credentials away. You ought to never, ever have the privilege to interact with a child ever again. Shame on you. You're a loser. That's not your place. That's not your job. The school systems are not there for that reason. This is subverting the family, subverting the Constitution. They're taking your children from you. We all need to be saying no. We need to be saying no harder than what we are. And we're not. And that's why this is still spiraling. And I will sit up here every time and be equally mad at myself that this is literally, and I go back to, I'm running into, the only time I put a mask on is when I must get food for my family. Yeah. And I have my kids in a running locked car in the parking lot because I'm not masking my kids. Yeah. I'm not putting them through psychological warfare. And my family, and to get into this, I'm going to touch on the race agenda because of this. I have mixed race children, and I live on a street with a family down the road that has children of mixed race also. And there has been issues with between our families that they are a masky family and we're not a masky family, and we've had issues with this family telling our children they weren't allowed to come past a certain place on the street on their bicycles because of all these, and so there was sort of this like COVID undercurrent going. And then when we put up the American flag, I guess somehow that was a trigger for them to put up their BLM, and I became a racist. Mm-hmm. So this is a story in my neighborhood.
Telling your kids.
This is true. This family told my children that their mother is a racist. We've lived on this street with this family for 4 years, by the way. So this was going on for a couple months, and I'm not going to feed into that, but we have been so super fortunate. We have a family that just bought the house or just moved into the house next door to us, and they are also a family that is an interracial couple. They have mixed race children, and do you know what? My kids don't give a fuck. They don't care. They don't care.
They're hilarious. They're all hilarious.
There's a little white girl next door. There's a little black boy next door. There's a little mixed race boy next door. Across the street, there's little blondie head little boy. And do you know what? They all sit and play on my front porch and play Legos. They all eat the same ice cream out of my freezer, and they don't care. They don't ask. None of these children are masked. All of us families, we interact with. In fact, we were invited to do this like circus fire party, fire dancing, juggling part, right? Like families getting together. But the point is, I don't know why I derail it. Probably just because of how much this is just in front of my face. But I took my kids out to Turtle Rock, and I'm watching again. I have a little boy that's mixed race, and I'm just watching like my children out here playing. And here I watch my little guy, and he's off with a little black boy, and they're up the river they go, and they're in their goggles. And you know what? At no point did. Not only was his mother sitting with a group of people, all of different looks like ethnicities and races, and they're talking and they're playing, and guess what? It's not a problem. It's not a problem that they're pushing. And
sounds like no one's racist.
But it sounds like the kids don't care. When my little boy, my one little boy he has black hair. His eyes are virtually black. He has very, very, very beautiful olive dark skin. And I have a little niece who her hair is so blonde. It's almost like that white color. She has stark blue eyes. And do you know what? They don't care. Mm-hmm. They don't care. They love each other. They play. But what's happening is now I've got my little guy coming up the road to me to say, Mom, they said you're racist. Doesn't that mean that you don't like black people? Mom, doesn't it mean? And this is shit that they've never heard before. Mm-hmm. They've never heard this before. Because why? Because American families are not teaching hate to their children. American families are loving one another the way that we were all. And in fact, I was thinking about this a lot today as I look at my children playing and doing life the way that it's meant to be lived. And I'm watching on the news and them saying what's happening out there in the world. And I am going to be 42 years old this year. And maybe I've had, right. In some ways I've had a really, really hard, horrible journey in some ways. And in some ways I've been very blessed and elevated. But at the end of the day, we all have our struggles. And even still throughout all of the diversity, right? So I've been through, marriages and divorces and child sexual abuse and sexual trauma. I've been through, domestic violence. I've been through my mother committing suicide at my house. I've been through rebirth and renewal. I've pulled myself out of ashes, and it wasn't in all of this and everyone I've interacted with in my life ever was it brought to my attention that we were having an issue where we didn't like each other based on the color of our skin until really, I know it's been a few times in my life, but really this COVID thing, so we're talking about COVID, but this is part of that platform agenda. It's just like how you have 3 parts to the presidency, you've got several parts to this COVID agenda, and
I'm so frustrated because I watch like I say, we've got this one and I feel bad for these kids.
Yeah.
They're being fed hate by their mothers. They're being absolutely fed hate and taught something that isn't true. They're not allowed to even play. So now we've got 9 kids in the neighborhood, all like palling around. They're back and forth at each other's house, and they're all, we're eating meals together. Someone's barbecuing here. Someone's sleeping in the teepee in this backyard, right? And then we've got this one family on the street that, because of the COVID agenda, it has been blown up, because I feel like that's another thing, right? They have to have more and more reasons to try to, they're just building this mountain of reasons of why we have to have division and why everything has to change. And really the reasons don't exist. We have this one family full of kids that can't play with and won't play with my kids. And further, they're growing up on a street where they're being taught that to be enemies with my kids, that my kids are the enemies and I am the enemy, when we can be totally symbiotic, right? I mean, I've lived here for all these years and not had a problem with this family until the COVID thing, until flags were going up and I wasn't putting up the right flags, until, it's bonkers to me, especially if anyone who knows me knows my family dynamic, that I even have to speak on it. And I know I'm not the only person that feels this way. So it's absolutely blowing my mind. And I think, how, I look at, like I say, I'm looking at my little boy, the one who mostly doesn't, if I have to even say this, it doesn't look like the rest of us. How is he going to be made to feel? Is he going to feel like, what side is he supposed to get pushed to? What side is he supposed to stand on, right? And who is he allowed to be friends with and speak openly with, and which parents are gonna? To me, this is perversion from the ground up, and it's coming from the top down, and it's taking our kids. It's bleeding over into the school systems. I mean, and it's so saturated throughout. It's so saturated throughout our society. And I've said this several episodes back, them forcing us as parents to mask our children was the beginning of the end. That was the before and after for our kids, because the parents if you're masking your children and walking them to the park, if you are listen.
A year ago would have been child abuse.
It absolutely would. Yep. And there are, I have a lot of support, and not a lot of people do. There are single parents. Not everything is perfect. Not everything works out. But if you have any kind of a choice, and you're masking your kid to walk down the street, you're masking your kid at the pool. If you're like a couple of the families that some of us have seen at the rivers and the lakes, with kids in the lake, in the middle of the lake with nobody around them, and they're in a mask. Because you're hurting your family. You're hurting your family. You're hurting your children. You're setting them up to fail. Your choices shape their chances. They are given us to be their advocates and to be their powerful, strong voices, and to stand up for them and to stand up for a future that is something that will help them to thrive. Are we really about to make them all equal in poverty? Are we really about to allow, Billy to wipe out, millions of us because he's a eugenicist, he's a proclaimed eugenicist, and he wants to have
yes, go.
Keep going.
I really got demoralized coming in because we really, and I'm not even going to speak on it, but you guys know that we had some shit that we wanted to say today that we can't say, which super. Let me speak to injustice. And we've all talked about taking away people's voices. We have had to censor ourselves. We have had to essentially censor other people from being able to speak on this platform because of the shit that's going on in the world right now. We are having to be careful with our children.
Who we associate with.
And
it's not even, oh my God, it's such a fucking frustrating thing, dude.
It gets even so that my sister calls me today and she's emotional. She's been dealing with kind of a little bit of a health issue that she's kind of putting on the back burner because she has a 2-year-old, her first daughter. And she's not about to take her into public space and mask her baby, which is what they're doing in doctor's offices, by the way. I have a friend who went into the hospital for another issue, and they made him mask his 3-year-old little boy. So And the mask, it literally, the photos, the mask is hanging off this baby's face, but they're going to require it. So, and she's putting off, like, she's, wanting to maybe just go to urgent care and just like talk to them about a couple things. And she's so worried because if you go into urgent care now, it's like you guys were talking about, you can't be sick.
Yeah, it's
you can't
criminalized.
be sick. And with contact tracing, she's got a little girl. So, they've got all of her records. They've got all the information. They know where she lives. And so, I'm going to sit with my niece tomorrow so she can go to the urgent care. But now we're literally having these dialogues like, okay, well, when you go in, just say the baby hasn't been staying with you in a number of weeks. It's been at Auntie's house or whatever. Like, don't tell them. The fact that we have to have these conversations, and we've seen, and I want to do an episode on this, and I know that we will, but we're going to tear apart Child Protective Services one of these days because they are an absolute disgrace. They are not about families. They are certainly not about children, and they lose them more often than they save them, not to mention how often they traffic them out. And Oregon's Child Protective Services is a horrendous disgrace to the protection of children. It is an absolute disgrace. So again, we're talking about this. These agendas are so super interwoven with despair potentially of when we talk about like, well, this is, I think even sitting at this table, the more I let it sink in, we talk about, the new normal. And none of us want to accept that, but people talking about the new normal, and it's just it's so diabolical.
Yeah, it's disgusting.
It's so disgusting. It's so vile, and truly, guys, you can turn on CNN, turn on ABC, because let me tell you something. That's where the bad guys are. That is who they will cut your legs out from underneath you with one hand while pretending to hold you up with the other. You need to be very, very careful. The time for trusting the government, if there ever was this, and there really was. I feel like through the 80s and 90s, it was kind of like they kind of might want us. I felt that they did.
That's when they really were getting good at it.
They were getting good at it.
Yeah, dude. That's when they really started getting shifty and getting good at it.
What I mean is public perception.
Okay,
I don't mean that they were.
yes.
Okay, I was like, why are you guys disagreeing with me? Public perception. It's so obvious and blatant. I don't feel that it was as blatant because we were all fooled. No, weren't we all anti-terrorists? Weren't we all on board?
Okay, yeah. No, you're right. They were
Yes,
doing
I am.
They haven't changed. It's been the public perception.
Correct. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
Yes.
Totally.
So, okay.
Totally. Totally. Yeah. I was like,
growl at me.
That wasn't a growl.
So I think, a lot of things came. So many things. It was a wonderful rant. Yes, wonderful. I loved it.
So mad, you guys.
I think it comes down to some things, though, that like we've been saying a lot is where are your lines and what are you going to do when they get crossed? Because they're getting crossed.
Mm-hmm.
Our lines are being crossed as we speak. We've been saying this. They keep rolling it out farther. And, like my children have never worn a mask. My daughter turns 5 in 2 weeks. So now she's required to wear one when that happens. She's not wearing a mask.
Yeah.
But what am I going to do? Because there's going to be situations like you were talking about. Like, what if we have to go to the doctor?
Yeah, man.
What do we do in that situation? I haven't thought that through yet.
Well, I'm worried, like, what happens if, sometimes, like, kids get what's like a big, like, bronchitis, right? They get bronchitis, they get these, like, coughy things, they get whatever.
They're going to tell you it's COVID.
And they're going to, and, like, here's the thing. Like, so, as a parent, I actually, like, I physically feel stressed when I think about this because as if the medical profession didn't try to come in and impede your ability to parent anyways, and we can just use vaccines to begin with, but in every area, we talked about it in childbirth, and at every turn the government has been taking your children away from you. At every turn the government has been turning families away from the family unit as if it was something dirty and not to be held in high regard. It is the crux of all humanity. It is the beginning and end of all things that are beautiful and hopeful and pure. You cannot have a nation, you cannot have strength, you cannot have a a thriving economy without a strong family unit. And we need to have many, many, many of those. And the government doesn't want that. We want to convince our parents that we want our kids to be in daycare younger and younger and younger and younger and younger. We want them to be schooled younger and younger and younger under the guise of, oh, we're going to socialize them, when really psychology would tell us that until 7 years old, by the side of the parent is the absolute best place for your child to be. They need to be learning mannerisms. Children until they're 3 years old don't even understand that there's a universe outside of them. They can't have empathy. They can't empathize. They can't, if they're hurt or if you're hurt, there's a wall. They can't understand it. And so this first 7 years is so crucial to them. We're talking about the government using parent. I don't know why I'm so I'm mad. Yes. I'm sweating. I'm mad.
This is great.
Nice.
God, am I glistening? I hope
you look beautiful.
It's not picking it up. But I don't even know where I was going with that, you guys.
The government using parents.
They really are just using us against our kids. It's bringing me to tears because I won't be used as a sword against my children's psychological well-being. It is deep in my bones to protect them unto my death. Yeah. And I won't accept this new agenda for them on their behalf. I won't say yes to it on their behalf. And this includes, I have having talks with my daughter who's worried that she doesn't get to start, 7th grade this year. This is, a special year. Gosh, I'm getting old. Her 8th grade year. But it's her 8th grade year, and she's not going to get to have her final middle school year with her peers and her friends. We don't even know what we're going to do with our kids. This is how crazy it is, because as far as I am concerned, the options that are on the table are not options. Public school is absolutely not an option. The private schools at this point follow the agendas, and most people would either choose not to maybe put their kids into a certain kind of private school, although there are many private schools that have nothing to do with religious affiliation, right? You can have schools that are immersion schools, Japanese immersion school. I think they have one in West Eugene. So there's all different kinds. I would go far down this rabbit hole too, and that's another thing, how we won't subsidize schooling. We're gonna have to edit all this out. I will go down too many dark rabbit holes.
Keep going.
They have been taking away our ability to properly prepare our children for life, both in an educational standpoint, and I think that we talked about this not long ago, Scott, and I don't know if we talked about this maybe around the campfire or something when we were all out, but just, God, we're going to have to edit this because I get off on too many tangents and I get confused.
It's
great. We love it.
Somebody else take it.
Well, I was going to say, too, when we went to that Open Oregon rally, they were talking about one of the things that really stood out to me. I can't remember even who said it, but they said, part of the Marxist agenda is that it takes about 20 years to indoctrinate society into whatever it is that you're trying to indoctrinate them into, and that's because it takes about that long for that generation who are infants when it starts in order to become adults. And so you have to have a mechanism in place to indoctrinate them, and that's what we have here. I mean, we have indoctrination centers, right? And it's different, though, because then the elites, right, they have their own schools that they all go to, and they get a whole separate different education, and then teaches them how to do that, while it's us, it's all just keeping us, adding numbers that don't even need to be added, right? You know what I mean? What do they call that? I can't remember. But anyway.
The biggest atrocious crime is the one that's committed against the psyche, because you can learn to read later. You can learn complex mathematical equations later. You can, learn a skill or a trade later. It's not what you can't learn later. It's what you can't gain back developmentally once those crucial developmental milestones have come and passed. This is where MK Ultra will play into this. This is absolute mind manipulation, psychopathy against the American people. This is the silent weapon. This is the quiet war. This is it being played out before us. They are using our children to do it. They've been breaking the family apart as part of its agenda. I mean, Bill Cooper has talked about it. I mean, there's so much. And I want to touch again too. I'm frustrated too as a woman. I grew up in an age where I was taught that, it was so important for women to get into the workplace, and women had to fight to be equal to men. That was so driven into me. And yet I never, as an older, I would say teenager and a younger, like 20s woman, I experienced a little bit of, I would say like a definite, like I was flat out told once for a job, I couldn't have a job because there was a lot of men on the job and they weren't going to put a female with the men. You know, we're talking like 20 years ago now, but you know, a couple little like, you know, it's terrible, but it happened. Where was I going with that? As a woman, you know, we're taught to desire to get like higher up, right? Like, I don't think it was ever in my life expressed to me that it was acceptable that if I were to want to stay home and raise my children, that was the way to go, that would be acceptable. And it really took until I was in my late 30s till I didn't feel, I'm going to say this now because I feel confident, but it took the better part of my motherhood before I didn't feel ashamed about being a mother. And that's what I was, that I didn't finish my law degree, that I didn't finish my psychology degree, that I didn't pursue, you know, way back when I used to want to do, you know, law enforcement for, you know, like sex crimes against children. All of these kind of things. And my whole life it was stacked against me that I hadn't somehow done enough. And that's the societal agenda. Because the truth of the matter is, as I did, in my opinion, with the circumstances that I had before me in my life, I did the absolute best thing I ever could have done with those years of my life, which was to help to shape the children that would become the future, the children that would continue to carry on legacies of the family unit, of the ethics that I set forward, of the morals that I set forward. This is the flavor of America. This is why it's important for every single family to hold tight to these things. That we're talking about systematic racism, which is not to say that racism does not exist. It's not to say that there are not things that cannot be made improved upon. But hear me when I say, for Americans especially, can I say something? What we have is an influx of college kids, it seems like to me, and adults with sordid pasts and nothing to stand for and stand for nothing, that have taken up this criminal mindset. We've had an African American president that we had for 8 years. We have Stella Emanuel, who is one of the most brilliant, well-spoken doctors in the field, speaking out like what we're talking about, like the Swedish study. Yeah. She understands what's up with hydroxychloroquine. We've got the police chief in Seattle stepping down because of Black Lives Matter and Antifa just absolutely perverting and destroying that beautiful city. And we've got, who is it, Ben Carson? Who's the doctor? And
we're picking out some names here. These are not isolated.
No, absolutely not. No, I'm just
that stand against these things.
Absolutely.
I agree with you 100%. Absolutely. I just want to point that out, that like, you know, there are many black people that don't. This is not their agenda.
Candace Owen.
And I'm watching these women who have worked so hard, and they're women of color. And when I was growing up, I was taught that was like the ultimate epitome of that, like, women of color. When I was growing up, that was like the most oppressed thing you would hear about. Like, women were not being treated equal. They were not being paid equal to men in the workforce. You know, we were being oppressed by being expected to stay home with our kids. The whole, you know, feminist agenda came out. And I will say it's an agenda because it's a perversion of women. I said it. It is not in women's best interest. It is not for women. It is counter women. It is counter our goddess. It is counter our power. And it takes away the beauty and the power of what we actually have, which is very, very large. The energy that a woman possesses, excuse me, to all the men that are listening, but women will understand, and I know that men who have greatly loved the heart of a woman will understand there is a power within a woman that the feminist agenda will pervert and take away. That and in the same way, they want to discredit men, that they are not. They should not display who they are. They should not stand up. They should, like, you know, you've said before too, like with where your kids are concerned, like and your mama's pregnancy, like that you felt like, can you have a voice? Like, what is your voice? What's your? We've taken that away. This is all of this for all of these decades, and all of this going out through all of these areas in our community. This has been the agenda all along. We're seeing them really boot stomp down with the COVID. We're seeing them really boot stomp down, especially if I would like at some point to pull up again. I know we were looking at some links, but like we're looking at like where all of these donations for BLM are going.
Act Blue, which goes directly to Joe Biden.
Yeah, right. And then we've got I mean it's so.
So if you donate to
perverse.
BLM, you're just putting your money to Joe
Has
Biden.
Biden really stood up for the black community in,
I'm pretty
in his
sure.
history?
Yeah, he's a very staunch supporter of the black community, isn't he? I mean, wasn't that what the 1996 crime bill was all about?
Oh, yeah,
making
yeah.
sure that we make really strict laws in black community and targeting minority communities, right? And so that they get imprisoned and get the help that they need, right?
Well,
that's part of it.
Well, let's be clear. He's totally fine with murdering black babies.
Yeah.
He and she both are. Listen, if you're a human being and you want to stand on moral high ground and talk about human rights.
You know anything
and
about
we're not
porn?
talking about the slave trade in Libya. If we're not talking about how your cell phone battery, you can edit this out if you want. I'm
Tesla?
still going
No,
to
it's
say,
good.
you want to talk about where your lithium's coming from? That's little kids. That's slave labor. Don't talk to me about the oppression that's going on in Portland, Oregon. If you want to talk about something real, let's talk about something real. If you want to help to undo slavery, if you want to really talk about human rights issues, you can't start murdering humans when they're brand new humans. That is the truth. And whether or not that burns you to hear, you don't have to agree with me, but your way isn't working. Your way isn't working. And the way that our society has gone is down. And to throw human beings away and make that be the norm, that's where this eugenist movement's going to come in. Margaret Sanger, the whole
Margaret
business.
Sanger, dude. Just take
That's
just
another
do a quick
episode
little
we
Google
need to do.
search. We are going to do one for sure. We've been talking about it for a long time, but like, dude, just do a quick Google search. Margaret Sanger racism. If you don't know who Margaret Sanger is,
Corbett does some good stuff.
I'm jumping all over the place because
This is great.
I've had so
This
much
is great.
built up inside of me this weekend. So I know you're gonna probably have to edit out a
No,
lot
no,
of this.
keep going.
We're not editing anything. None of this is getting edited.
Welcome to Meganzilla.
For
Meganzilla.
the first 20 minutes, I was like, "You're gonna be cool. You're gonna be calm. Your emotions will not get the better." I was like, I actually feel like maybe I'm like getting so zen that I might like
We
fall
love your
asleep at this
emotion.
table, and then I'm like, but then I crush you. So
Yes,
like,
yes. No, that's the name. This episode's gonna be called the Megan's Epic
Megan
Rant.
crush you.
Megan will crush you. Yeah. You know, we've been talking like this is all like just a part of the plan. Like, you know, once you zoom out and look at it, it's all a part of the plan, man. And so
Important to zoom out. I like
Yeah,
that. Like
yeah.
you have to be mindful about this situation. Look at it. Like if you're only on one side and sitting there and just pointing the finger at the other side, you're exactly where they want you. Step out a couple of degrees and look at it. Look at what's happening. Does it make sense? Does it make sense in terms of the data? Does it make sense? I mean, really,
is this all just a coincidence?
I don't think it takes a lot of intelligence. You don't have to look very far behind the curtain to see this. The whole thing falls apart real quick.
Yep, absolutely.
It's okay that it does that, guys. That's the scary part.
You've been lied to.
Everything falling apart, everything being a lie. It's very scary, but it's okay. It's okay that it does that. It's okay for things to fall apart.
Yep.
That's how things come back together in an appropriate way. So let these uncomfortable things happen so that you can have a better quality of existence.
Absolutely.
And that is what it will be. It's tenuous and it's stressful anyways. You might as well live it in a fashion of truth. You might as well, use your intelligence in the direction of truth and of uncovering things that are good for you and yours.
Yeah,
Really.
I would really recommend too. Like you were talking about quality of life. Like we're gonna really. I have a real strong feeling that in the next few months we're gonna have our whole standard or definition of what quality of life is gonna be completely shattered, and we're gonna have to completely radically redefine what that means, and it's going to be basically just basic stuff, right? And it's going to be really frightening, And I think, our group, we have like a circle of, right now we're I don't know, 20 people or so. People that are friends, family, people that are awake to what's going on, people that are waking up to what's going on. We started like a little, private group chat, and we started chatting about like, okay, we need to get together and come up with a plan. And so this is what we've been talking about for a couple of weeks. Like, okay, we need to draw these lines and what's going to happen when these lines get crossed. Okay, we live in Oregon. Like what we were talked about earlier about how when they role played the whole election and how Podesta, who played the role of Biden, John Podesta, he basically
Pedophile Podesta.
Yeah. He basically said that he during the test run, they did not concede the election. If Trump, let's say in this simulation, Trump wins, they did not contest the election. This is a New York Times article. You can go read it, dude. But like, okay, so they don't concede the election. So all the blue states secede from the United States and declare a separate nation with Biden as president. Okay, so that's what they've said they're going to do. Nancy Pelosi said that she said, I'm going to be president during this time when there's no president because the election's up for debate, okay? Because that's what happens.
Stop.
But you can listen to her saying that she expects to be president or something like that because there's going to be a period of time where there's going to be no president because the election's still being contested. But they've also said it's going to be like a hot civil war, and we're right here in Oregon where we're in the war zone. So we're getting together as a collective, and we're going to basically say, okay, we're going to like maybe say, okay, what do we need to get as a community? And we're going to
like if they restrict travel, like if they restrict, yeah, exactly. If they restrict travel, where are we all going to meet?
We have a place that we're going to go, and that's the thing. Like if
we're all going to gather our supplies.
Down, if communications go down, if electricity goes out, or whatever, we're all going to meet at this location. Okay. Yeah. We've got pews. We've got, we've got.
It took me a minute. I was like, wait, what the hell?
We've got. We just need to start.
It took till you were laughing for me to get it.
We need to start. We need to start collecting food, water, and we need to start supplies.
Okay. I want to just interrupt for 1 second.
And so anyway, we're being proactive about it, man. And I encourage everybody to do the same. Find your tribe. Find your people.
Find your tribe and have what we call the round table discussion. Have yourselves a round table. Get your people around. That's what we're doing. We're getting the people that we love most. And everybody has something. This isn't even about, and we had a couple of people in our circle ask whether or not this was like a discussion about politics.
Yeah.
I mean, politics are driving this. Let's don't any of us be confused about that. But what we're talking about is we are all like literally we're being herded, right? So what do we do when we get to the cliff edge? Because that's exactly we're just in with the herd, and they're forcing us to the edge. So when we're approaching this, what are we going to do, and what are our lines in the sand, and how can we? Because I think this is the thing.
For the record, I don't have
can't do it alone.
We can't own pews.
I am allowed to own pews.
I don't have any. I don't touch pews at all.
I very much.
You should not touch pews.
I don't touch pews at all. For the record.
Okay, I just want to say I'm gonna step in here real quick just to maneuver one in, just because this is kind of I think I sent this to you guys, but there is a piece of hope that's a little closer that Idaho's House of Representatives votes to end coronavirus emergency effective immediately. So this was just 2 days ago. Today, lawmakers in Idaho's House voted to advance a resolution that ends Idaho Governor Brad Little's coronavirus emergency declaration, and it goes on. So we've talked about Missouri. I've heard Iowa's a good place, but just to throw some places out there for people that are thinking about this. This is the kind of stuff we're thinking about. We're thinking about where can we go? Where can we go?
Or where can like a mass like where can like a number of us acquire land?
Yeah,
that's another thing. Like and it's interesting because
we're
I feel
finding
like
that's not as easy as it would seem.
And
I
think that there's another piece to that.
Good.
There's this whole other piece to that I was talking with Rob about the other day. Is that if you don't outright buy that land and pay for everything, if you get on, if you are buying that through the bank or whatnot, they could still recall that. That is really not yours. So there's a whole nother piece that he brought that up that really they could still use it against you to do what they want. So there's not to spread more fear.
At the end of the day, even if you own your land outright, the government always can tax it. At the end of the day, nothing is yours.
Yeah.
So except for you.
Yeah,
that's what's at stake,
and they're coming for that
that's
too,
what's
baby.
At stake is your individuality, your children's sovereignty. That's what's left. That's what they're coming for, and if they can succeed in making America fall, then the world will have fallen, and that will be unrecoverable. We will, and we are already at. But how many before and after moments do we need? How many times? Yeah. And we're talking. I'm hearing Michelle Obama talk about under no circumstances
Michael Obama.
Uncle Mike,
Big Mike,
good old Big Mike.
Big Mike.
Cut to me showing my. Am I allowed to even say that we were having to explain what Big Mike was?
They know.
Now my kids understand because they've now seen video standing in my kitchen. I'm like, you're old enough. Come, I'm going to tell you that. I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you.
I'll show you the video of Big Mike's roll of quarters.
It's so horrible. So we've got Michael Obama. Sorry. All right, I'm gonna be polite, but I have no respect for this human. So, but Michelle Obama saying that under no circumstances should Biden concede this election. So let me spell out what that means. When you have highly respected top government officials essentially saying that,
Clinton
and what she's saying is, under no circumstances. What we call that in the United States is an act of terrorism. What we call that is a traitor.
Treason.
What we call that is treason. That is correct. So those people who are standing on the abolition of our Constitution, why don't we just quit locking down everything with COVID so you can travel the fuck on out to a country where they are all about what you are fighting to make this nation be? Because I promise you, if you really want this anarchy, it's out there waiting for you. As a matter of fact, all of you with loud voices and all of your arson and all of you big guys beating people with skateboards, how about you use your big voices and your big arms to help some of these trafficked kids? How about if we talk about where your lithium batteries are coming from? How about we talk about the abolition of the family and why you act the way that you do now? So there are okay, I'm gonna stop.
No,
I love it. I love it.
I start to get too upset and then I get confused about where I want to go with it.
Keep going, man. Meganzilla, baby.
Gosh.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like I'm keeping on point. I keep saying that.
It's great, but I think we should kind of come back here. I think there are the positive things that I see. Is that we're both parents and we can both say, like, we'll be able to tell our kids when they did this, we stood up against it.
Hell yeah.
We stood up against it.
That's what we're doing now. Like,
we stood up against it. We did not concede. We did not acquiesce to this new way of doing things that took away our freedom and that stomped the Constitution. We stood up.
And explain this to your kids. People talk to their kids about sex, but talk to them about this. Talk to them about why we don't comply. Talk to them about what we stand for, because that gives them internal armor. It gives them a sword to fight with as they go forward. And they need to be able to use their intelligence. They need to be able to use their minds in such a way because the war is being fought on the mind. So don't just not mask your kids. We talk about why we don't mask our kids. Yeah. We talk to our kids about why some of these agendas are not good for our families, our lives, or our country. We talk about why some issues that are brought to light are important issues, and we trace those back. We take responsibility for our families and our children.
And it's all coming from a place of love and compassion and tolerance and respect and acceptance and all the things that I guess these folks claim to have, but you get alone in a room with them, those are the last things that they stand for 100%. Well, I remember like when these riots first started, right? When like the actual like burning and the looting and all that stuff first started, like, it was like, I remember having the thought, and I remember hearing other people saying like, God, eventually someone's going to pull out a gun and someone's going to get shot and it's just going to go all downhill from there. And it seemed like such a preposterous thing. And it's something that I was like, oh my God, yeah, when that happens and it's all over. Like that was like a worst case scenario that I couldn't even imagine that actually happening. And now it's like, that's how, when I think back to where we were to where we are, the frog in a pot of water, dude, like now it's a daily occurrence. People are just shooting each other in the streets, just murdering people in the streets on both sides. And it's like, it's just, now that's just normal. I remember a time where that seemed like worst case scenario, my biggest fear. And now it's just, whatever. Who else got shot today? I don't, whatever.
Also, let's remember it's been like this many months, right? A couple little months that this became normal. And that's just it. Okay. Oh, Kyle Rittenhouse. And we can cut out his name either. But the 17-year-old, the whole thing is that I'm not even going to get into the whole thing about that tonight. I think that deserves like a whole section of a whole nother, and I can't emotionally even do it. But one of the things that that I'm reading that he's being called out for is that he traveled from his state to another state to and a quote that I read, BLM spokesperson was quoted saying that he was looking for trouble because he was defending businesses, quote, that weren't even his. So here's my question then, and this is why the whole agenda is to subvert our government and whatever you're going to stand behind. But if you're whatever label you're standing behind, I don't care. But if you're the one that's standing behind the destruction, if you're the one that's standing behind the arson, if you're destroying things, your virtue is over now. Any chance you had to be credible that you were standing on something that was about helping other human beings is over now. And what is it that Americans, I'm going to speak to Americans, are expected to do when our cities, our towns, our businesses where we shop, where our kids walk down the street are under attack, that we are supposed to stand in our living rooms with our masks on and hide behind the curtains while we watch the fall of America? I don't think so. And in fact, what needs to happen is more people need to stand up. If you are going to bring violence and burning and death and hate and murder, people are going to stand up against that. This is not,
especially when the police are being told to stand down and the mayors are participating in it.
And again, we're talking about treason. These are traitors.
And look at me, I'm here defending the damn government. No, I ain't playing that. And that's the funny thing too, is like, you know what? Here's the solution, folks. Here's the damn solution. You want a damn solution? Here's the damn solution. We need to sit down, because here we are, over here, ranting and raving about all these lockdowns, how the government needs to fall, and all these, we need to drag them out of their houses, and we need to not hurt them, but give them a stern talking to, and be like, look.
They need to be locked into a dark cell for the rest of all their days for crimes against humanity.
Yes, and BLM, Antifa, they're saying the exact same fucking thing. Dude.
They are.
Oh my God. What can you imagine what would happen if we all got together and said, wait a minute, we are actually fighting the same people over the same things, and actually put this to good use, man, instead of hurting and murdering each other. What the hell?
I think that the bigger issues behind what's going on with these agendas is it's a dark issue. What we're talking about, we're talking about fascism, we're talking about Marxism, we're talking about anti-American ideals. When you're talking about these rioters that are destroying things and standing on these labels as if they are warriors of peace or bringing about something that is a positive change for America, that is not what is happening. You have no credibility here. Yep. And again, what do you expect? And I'll tell you what they expect. They expect all of us to roll over and to simply turn over everything that is ours, including our own ability to safely identify with our own individuality from us. And then that still won't be enough. They will still march us off along with all the rest of the camps. Do not be fooled. Do not be divided.
Yeah, they're using you, and then as soon as their agenda's played out, you're going to go right in the ovens with us, dude. Well, I shouldn't say ovens. Maybe you're going to go right in the freaking... They're probably
the guillotines.
Right in the guillotines.
I think they're. I'm going to vote that they're going to cut heads off in the town square. That's what I'm going for.
Yeah, but
10 years. 10 years.
I'm coming back. We somehow back around to this, but back to the acquiescence that we talked about.
Yeah.
That we were kind of getting on ourselves a little bit at first, and what I think that the biggest part of the solution that we can do, and we've talked about this before, but is become less dependent on the system that wants you to acquiesce to it. We were using the doctor example at one point. We virtually don't use doctors the same way anymore. We have become less dependent on that system and found because for one, that system is not helping us.
It's not a healing industry.
Yeah.
The truth is, and people believe that the medical community is about healing, and there are healers in the medical community, but the medical profession is not healing. They are not about healing. They are run, paid for, trained, bought and paid for through the pharmaceutical companies. Make no mistake about where their bread is buttered and what it is that they're doing.
Are going to try to raise our kids this way, where they are masked and they're these new way of doing things that is unacceptable, then we need to not acquiesce to that. We need to find a new way to raise our children. We need to. Aside from a grocery store at this time, and I would even go as far as to say, what we're talking about is getting land and growing our own food and things like this. We're trying to make steps to become less dependent on the system that makes us acquiesce to it.
Well, can I say, this is what I think the number one inhibitor of people doing that is. I'm going to tell you the number one thing is electronics. We are all arrested to the idea of the digital universe. And I'm speaking in a broad term, but the Neuralink rollout, the whole...
we're filming this on Thursday, the day before the Neuralink rollout. So
okay, so the whole SpaceX thing, we're talking about, transhumanism. Listen, where was I? What was I starting to say? That
was the electronics. The
electronics. And when we talk about like and that's this is just occurring to me. We're talking about like drawing these lines in the sand, but also it's about this is what I keep saying, like this is what they're taking my liberty, taking this. But what am I willing to give up to take it back? Are you willing to turn your telephone off? Are you willing to walk away? Are you willing to take your children and your family and the people that you hold dearest to you and walk away from this agenda? Because that is what it's going to take. It's going to take that. And while, like anything, the internet and the digital technology and all of these advances can be used for good, by and large, they are not. And make no mistake, generally, they are not. The fact that we see them being used for a good purpose is part of the mask, is part of the facade, is part of the blue pill that everyone has been taking, and it's important to realize. I feel like that to me, you have to be willing to say no more, and that doesn't include still doing this all day long or on CNN all day long. You have to be willing to step away. That's where they're going to lose their power. In fact, they've set this entire pandemic up to make sure that we were isolated in our homes, locked down, separated away from each other, to where if we wanted to connect, the only way to do that was through our one devices. Platform. Yes. And let's not be silly. It's Facebook. And so be very, very aware. And this is something we should bring to the round table. What did you say?
I said Facebook, Twitter.
Oh, Twitter.
Tinder.
He said Tinder.
You say
Tinder.
I'm just saying.
Did you?
People are doing that.
And I'm just gonna give you guys
email address.
Might sneak an Xbox off to Missouri with us.
Yeah.
But this is just on principle, right? It's just it's an important point to be made.
100% agree.
Turn your
with
phone
you.
on once a week,
agree with
or maybe
you.
a couple times a week.
You
to listen
can't
to
still
Truthzilla.
want to do. You can't still want to be interested in what Neuralink, how cool that might be in your brain, and still want to keep your kids safe. This is a line in the sand. Yeah. This digital world is not natural. It's not organic. It's not made for human consumption. That our minds can conceive and do something so brilliant also means that we can use that mind to destroy ourselves. We need to be very careful about what we're standing for and what we're allowing our children to be witness to and take part in. Do not, in the pursuit of higher excitement, higher connection, to give up the things that are fruitful and true.
And I just will say, like, I have always been the guy who chased the technology and loved the games and all. Like, I'm just gonna be honest here.
Oh yeah, me too.
But man, where we are going scares the hell out of me.
Yep.
It scares the hell out of me, and it scares the hell out of me for my children.
Yeah.
Like, and I agree with you 100%. And
because that gets me. I think like, when we all talk about like moving off grid, when we've all like posed this and we're talking about what we're going to talk about this roundtable discussion, and just like pose these questions, right? And I think like when I'm at home and I'm like alone pondering these things, I'm like, well, but I mean, like, I don't want to give up Facebook. Like, Facebook's the devil. I'm just going to be honest. I'm going to speak honesty always at this table, always anywhere. Okay. Yeah. Like, and the truth, and like, so, and I was like telling Scott about this because we were talking about like giving up, accounts and all, and I was like, okay, so, some people, and like my close friends understand, but like I went through like terrible trauma. And so I was kind of like a shut-in for a long time. I was, just a badly traumatized person. I had witnessed horrible things, and I really shut down and pulled away from society for like a number of years. And by the time that I started feeling confident enough to even re-engage with humanity, it was through Facebook as a platform, in that it was like family from far away because I wasn't leaving my house. And then it was like someone in Hawaii, and then it was someone in Thailand. And I was looking at these pictures, and I was seeing the ocean. I was seeing these mountains. I was seeing people on hikes, and it drew me out of my shell. And it's that emotional codependence that I'm going to acknowledge in myself, to where when I'm talking about like, we're going to move off grid, I'm like, well, like, I know my brother lives in Missouri, and they can't even like hardly make a phone call from their land. Like, but
sounds great.
But it's conditioned because I don't need it. I don't need it. And in fact, the people that I love most, the people that hopefully I fill their tanks, and I know that these people that I have around me, they fill my life with joy and love and support and friendship and whatever it is that we offer one another, whoever our circle is, that's what you need. Your feet in the ground, some wholesome food on your table, and the people around you love you, because this life is very, very fleeting. It is very, very fleeting. Yeah. It goes quick, and we've talked about keeping hope safe. And so in the end of all of this darkness too, I want to say that this is also, and I've had other friends bring this up to me too, because I can kind of get like, I do get like sucked away down these dark, like portals of doom, and I want to say keep hope safe, but really it has helped a lot of us to reconnect more soulfully with the people around us. And I want to keep hanging on to that and not be lost to, like we're looking through all these articles, and as we're like preparing for tonight, even I'm like, today I was just reading for hours and hours and hours, and I was just like, it's so much, it's so overwhelming. But then I'm like, okay, I'm gonna take a step away. I'm just gonna like sit in my front yard. I have like, my kid has a lizard, right? So we have Jacob's Rothschild at our house sitting outside with me.
Yeah, little Jacob Rothschild, yeah.
But and then I'm just thinking like, okay, but what I have is good, and what we have is pure, and what we're fighting for is worth it. And these other things, all of this technology, all of this development, all of this, I don't need it. No. And if that's the line, which I am starting to see more and more clearly, if that's what it is, I am more than happy to have had this opportunity to give it up in pursuit of a better life.
Amen.
All right, and just to quote a little David Icke, we're all that ever is, ever has been, and ever will be having an experience called Truthzilla.
Oh, yeah,
very
that's
nice.
right.
Very nice.
Hell yeah.
I like to just quote David Icke. I feel like David Icke, I listen to these long conversations. He does, like, all his conversations are at least 3 hours, but he talks about all the darkness, but in the end, it always comes back to some simple principles of that we're just blips. We're just here. We're just point of consciousness that's here for just a brief moment. And what we should do, we should love and treat each other
and accept.
Yeah, and
compassion.
and I know that
Empathy.
it's hard when there's all this corruptness going on and whatnot, but we can take care of one another and love where we can and put our feet down where we need to.
Yeah.
But really, it's a brief experience.
It is. All right, everyone. Well, thank you so much for sitting in with us tonight. May the ripples that each of us cast in our lives spread to beautiful lakes and streams that are full of hope for the future. I'm Megan, sitting here with Scott and Ed. We wish all of you intellectual prosperity. Good night.
Good night.
Pew, 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 pew.
Pew, pew, pew.